What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious, along with Just Total Package, and Craig the British Bulldog, bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Today's topic, is it still that bad? For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, and check out exclusive content on Daily Motion at Our Wrestling Podcast. And on social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? Jess, if I'm not mistaken, this is a first edition of Is It That Bad?
It is. Look, man, it's almost the end of the year when we're recording this. I don't know when this is going to get released. I'm out of topics. I just, it's been a full year of doing this madness. And so, I don't know, man. I got to make filler as it comes, huh?
But I kind of like this one.
This could be interesting, you know?
So part one is going to be, yeah, is it still about as David Arquette winning the WCW championship in 2000, Craig? So how do you feel about this bad boy?
I just want us to look back at some of these things. At the time, maybe we thought it was bad, and I think the wrestling world thought it was bad. But when you look back, was it really that bad, or was there good intention behind it? Like, I don't know. That's for us to decide as we progress.
Well, and were there good intentions by more than just one party, right? Because there's some people that definitely had great,
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, there you go. David Arquette's relationship with the World Championship Wrestling, WCW, began with the film Ready to Rumble, which I enjoyed.
Starting there? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, starting.
Yeah, going with David Arquette winning the WCW championship in 2000. I'm starting off hot.
That's where we're going. David was brought into a storyline to help promote the movie. Ready to Rumble required Arquette to learn the basics of professional wrestling, and he was taught by WCW performers Chris Kanyon, who worked as a stunt coordinator on the film, and Diamond Dallas Page, his stunt double, and Shane Helms.
Hilarious.
Yeah, which is interesting because I remember right from the movie.
Double, every time we see the back of David Arquette in the movie, it's fucking DDP's mullet. It's like, what the fuck?
And David Arquette wasn't even really a wrestler in the movie. He was someone who was helping a wrestler come back.
Yeah, he was like a security guard, wasn't he, or some shit like that?
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, why did he have to learn moves? But okay. As well as promoting the film, the move was also seen as a means to boost the ratings for WCW Monday Nitro, the flagship program, which was at that time competing for viewership with the WWF. And Arquette's championship win came on April 26th of 2000 broadcast of Thunder. He and then champion Page competed in a tag team match against Jarrett and Eric Bischoff with the stipulation that the competitor scoring the winning pinfall would win the championship belt. Bischoff, like Arquette, was not a trained wrestler, but rather a WCW executive who had previously been the company's president. By pinning Bischoff, Arquette emerged as the champion. Let's just stop right there.
There's a referee. He's over towards Arquette. 1, 2, 3. What is it? Did David Arquette just... What's going on here? David Arquette won the world title. David Arquette won the world title. He can't believe it. David Arquette won the world title. Did David Arquette just win the world title? Did I see that?
So, obviously, you have to make it believable, right? Because there's no way Arquette is pinning an actual wrestler by some people's means. Also, the stipulation kind of sucks because obviously the champion never got pinned. Doesn't make sense, but I don't know. What do you guys think of it?
Yeah, I think, well, Russo has his fucking fingerprints all over it, and I hate Vince Russo. So it would be very easy for me to say, like, no, it is still that bad. However, if you look at the state of the company at this point, 2000 was not a good year for WCW, and they were
struggling.
At this point, they were less than a year of going out of business. That's how close it was to the end. So they were on their death rattle, for sure. Tony Schiavone, of all people, was like, listen, he's like, I think he was one of the ones directly responsible for it because they were talking about the angle, and Schiavone's the head commentator, and Russo said something to him, and he was like, or you can just make Arquette the champion. And then Russo's like, what did you say? And he goes, I mean, he's married to Courtney Cox. He's a Hollywood star. Like, why would you not? Like, what do you have to lose? Like, basically, Schiavone's like, I mean, we fucking suck, like, at this point. Like, so I asked the question, is it still that bad? Because if you look, and maybe it takes a little fantasy booking to sweeten the pot, or maybe it is still that bad. But I mean, like, if they would have done something smart, and had David Arquette just beat Bischoff. Like, I want to say the ending was convoluted as well. Like, Jarrett had DDP pinned, and then Arquette had Bischoff pinned, and the referee acknowledged Bischoff and Arquette as the legal men. And so he counted the pin between. It's like WCW couldn't even get the ending definitively, you know? Like, if you're going to make that choice, make the 3 count the only count going on in the ring, and make sure the people, I would say top row, but those were empty. Make however the highest amount of people you had on the Thunder taping in 2000, make sure the person in the back row sees it. And instead, they convoluted that. Like, so it's like, fuck. Like, there was a lot of reasons why people hated it. However, the concept of getting a star from mainstream media to come and influence your product is not new and wasn't the first time. I think of Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler back in Mid-South. Like, you know, that's how far back I could go with them taking somebody that had some kind of like celebrity credibility and bringing them in there. But they did it right. They did it fun. You know, like it could easily have been, they could have easily turned Arquette heel, which they did later anyway. Dave will read on. And but they didn't do it to prolong the title run. If Arquette would have turned heel and just said, like, you know, this is my plan all along, but hired other WCW wrestlers to protect him, because, like, I'm not a wrestler, I don't fucking wrestle, like, you know, and be the funny heel bad guy. I mean, I'm not saying you stretch it out for a year. It's not a bloodline story, but I mean, like, you stretch it out for a couple of months to get people talking about your product or whatever, and be like, dude, he has no right to be the world champion, but even he knows it. So he's hiring people to protect him. Hey, I'm from Hollywood. I have millions of dollars in my pocket. I'll give you some of that money if you guys protect me. I'm WCW champion. I'm a lifelong fan. Look at me. Like, you know, and like, if they would have leaned into it and really committed, but the problem with WCW, and it's why they got in the trouble that they got into, they just lived week to week, and they tried to hotshot everything week to week. And that's what killed it. But if they had a plan for David Arquette, if you're going to capitalize on a Hollywood star, and you could debate on what size of a star he was, you know, but he was married to Courtney Cox, who did a vignette for them, by the way, like the next week, where they were on the studios of where they filmed Friends. And she was like, David, like, you're going to get yourself killed. I was like, even more of a reason to be like, lean into him. Now, I own this place, you know, or whatever. They could have done anything, but instead he was like the Mikey Wimprek of ECW, where when he won the tag title, he's like, I didn't even want this belt. And they're like, and his partner's like, you're wearing the belt. And he's like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, and they're like, we're going to take on the Gangstas next week. I don't want to take on the Gangstas. Like, he didn't want it, but he's a champion. Right. And he's like, I don't want, that's what they were trying to lean into with David Arquette. It just didn't work. And then they tried to swerve you at the end and turn him heel. But if he was heel from the beginning, and he was just like, oh, you need me. I'm a Hollywood star. Just like, duh, Mr. Lawler, duh, I'm from the South. Like, if he leaned into that, it might have worked. Like, yeah.
That was so
but
amazing.
Looking back, is it still that bad? I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say, because of the fact that WCW was bad anyway. It didn't matter what they did. Right. Even if they put the belt on Hogan that night, it didn't matter. Nothing was turning around. Nothing was. I mean, and like,
yeah. So yeah, just to piggyback on where you're at, it wasn't that bad because they had to do something. And I also want to make sure, to your point, like you talked about Mikey Ripwright in that set, but David Arquette really didn't want this. He tried to push it off.
He didn't want the title. So it's like when he was on
screen,
he's like,
I respect it too much. I don't think that's okay. And they practically begged him to do it. Like, you know, because they were so desperate. Right. So the other part of it too, that I think I don't get that mad at it anymore, because it was already a sinking ship. I think it revitalized David Arquette's love for the possibility that he could actually do it. He ends up wrestling for another 15 years or more.
Well, I mean, he took a little bit break, but he did end up going to independent promotions and had a death match with, oh God, Craig, you probably remember the name. One of the well-known independent death match guys at the time. Arquette had a death match with him in one of the independent scenes and got fucked up. But
it's Nick Gage, I think.
Yeah, Nick Cage. Yeah, and he trained for it. David Arquette did, and he wrestled on the independents for a while. He just went out and, he's David Arquette's wrestling tonight.
He has love and respect for the business, so I don't look at it as that.
That's why I'm glad you said that, because that's a good angle to take on it and say it's not that bad. Because was it that bad at the time? Of course, because people are like, oh, they just really killed the title. I'm like, so the title wasn't dead going into 2000? You really think the title had credibility going in? It was already done. There was nothing that they could have done. If If anything, I would have leaned into this harder, and I would have been like, David, how long do we got you for? Like, we're going to make you like this faction leader for like 3 or 4 months where you're going to be dodging. As a matter of fact, you got to film a movie? You'll still be champion when you go film the movie, and we'll do a bunch of vignettes with you on the set talking about how, I'm Hollywood.
That would
as a matter of fact, I don't have to forfeit the title after every 30 days of not defending it because I bought my way out of it. Like, and then finally someone's going to catch him. Maybe heaven forbid, you build a star like Booker T or someone, and then they finally get a hold of him, and then they finally do it, and the place explodes. And you go back to being a wrestling company. Like, if they were going to do it, they should have leaned into it, not like, we're going to kind of half-ass this for a month or so, hype the pay-per-view for the Triple Cage, and then just erase it all. And like David Arquette turned heel, that's why Jarrett won that night, for the record. I didn't put that in the notes, but that's what happened. So it's like you swerve everybody for no reason when you could have swerved them from the beginning and had Arquette going like, my plan worked perfect. Like, Bischoff, you're running this company down the toilet. Now it's my turn. I own this place. Like
that sounds amazing on in hindsight.
Well, what's important is we blame David Arquette like back then too, and that there's a documentary which is fantastic. It's all You Can't Kill David Arquette, where David Arquette actually starts at the bottom and does the indies again, and then Jess was talking about that death match, and it's really good, and you realize how much he does love the business, and how much he does kind of bleed for it. So like none of this was David Arquette's fault. So
it wasn't,
and that's the biggest thing that I remember from back then, because I think we did hate him or blamed him, and the movie was a complete flop also. So
it's bad,
nothing. So.
I didn't mind it that much, but it was really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it. I didn't turn it off.
We learned nothing from No Holds Barred. We just went ahead and did like
this was better. It was better. It was better than No Holds Barred. I'll say that. All right.
King.
Topic number 2. Diesel wins the WWF Championship in 1995. That company had begun a decline in business in 92. And by 95, Vince was desperate to connect with the audience that made the WWF household name of the 80s. Make that come back. On November 26th of 94, Diesel faced Bob Backlund for the WWF Championship he had won from Bret Hart 3 days prior at Survivor Series. In the match at Madison Square Garden, Diesel defeated Backlund in the first 10 seconds of the bout. Unfortunately, even though Diesel was getting over as a character, he was watered down as champion. And in the summer of 95, we saw him defend the title against Sid and King Mabel. All the matches were terrible quality and did nothing to motivate casual wrestling fans to come back to this product. He had a 358-day reign as WWF champion, though. It's the longest in the 90s. And he would lose the title to Bret Hart at Survivor Series of 95. While in the WWF, Nash was part of the Clique. That was an influential backstage group that included Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman. So, okay. I have a lot to say here. I don't know if you guys remember Diesel talking about how he found out he was going to win the belt. He had to go to Vince's house.
Yeah.
And he fell asleep on his couch while he was there waiting for Vince to come down the stairs. I don't know if he had a tough night.
What was Vince doing upstairs, by the way? I'm more interested in that. He's just dicking around upstairs. Bow-de-doo.
Just making him wait like a
making
dick that he
calls
is.
and shit.
He's like,
I'll be with you.
Getting comfortable, buddy? Yeah.
Working out.
And he's like, we're gonna put the belt on you. And here's what I'm saying. I don't think it's as bad as I think it is, but I think the way they did it was just so bad. Like, I can't understand. I know you can't have Brett lose to Diesel. Like, I get that. So you're going to have a transition. But only 3 days. And Backlund was always that kind of guy that could carry stuff and be such
But why
a jerk.
can't you, though?
I'm with you. Well,
At the time, in 94, they finally split. I think he finally had enough of Shawn Michaels. So Diesel was leaning towards a face. But Diesel... To his credit, and I disagree with Nash a whole bunch on his podcast, by the way. He is so out of touch, it's painful. But I do agree with him. It's funny, after this title reign, directly after, he became the first tweener. He's like, I'm the first guy to use the middle finger on Raw. I'm the first guy to pretty much like tell fans to shut up, even though he was the first guy get out there. He's like, all of you people with black gloves on, fucking right on. Like, you guys can fucking come to my party anytime you want. Anybody else with those thumbs down, fuck off. I mean, he didn't say fuck off, but he was like, fuck you. Like, I don't need you. Yeah. And so he was the first, like, heel to acknowledge, like, I have fans. I love you. And heels don't ever play to fans. Like, that's not, you don't do that. But like it's funny, he used this whole year title reign to do that. I ask, is it still that bad? Because we remember I often refer to 95 as like my least favorite year in wrestling, and the King Mabel hurts me. But like when I look back, I'm like, was it really that bad? If you look back, Vince is guilty of one thing. He's guilty of trying to do the 80s all over again. Like, he tried to do Brett and all those people and the smaller people in like 94, Brett and Owen. And then like he was like, oh, Sean's my next guy coming up or whatever. And then he gets his eyes on Diesel. And then as a heel, Diesel was kind of getting pops. Like, you know, like he would come out as a bad guy with Sean. And then people started cheering for Diesel to turn on Sean because they're like, Sean's a little weasel piece of shit and you're a big fucking monster. You don't need him. And so that's when at the end of 94, people were cheering him because Sean would accidentally super kick him in matches and be like, I didn't mean to, and all that stuff. Yeah, and Diesel's like, oh, and so Diesel finally walked away from him. And then they used that momentum on the house show to beat Bob Backlund. But I'm like, why couldn't, to do your point, Dave, before he turned face, just beat Bret as heel?
Temporarily out of action. Big Daddy Cool, the ranked #1 contender. The bell rings and Diesel, the 7-foot monster, seizes the opportunity. What a boot to the midsection. And then from there, Bob Backlund, jackknife to the canvas. Diesel, the cover. And in a record-setting 8 seconds, Diesel becomes the new World Wrestling Federation champion. The celebration was on as Big Daddy Cool became the leader of the new World Wrestling Federation generation.
Like, well, why not? And then turn face after that. Like, that's
because then Sean could have been jealous of him holding the title, all those things.
Yes.
But then also the way you do it on a house show, and you bring out those shitty fucking background fireworks out of nowhere. When he won them, like, how did you know he was gonna win them? Why is there fireworks?
It was the fire plate. They slid it in the ring.
Yeah,
it's like they come out like fucking like Tex on a stage, and they go and they slide it in, and then it's just sparklers like behind or whatever. Like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
It didn't
go off.
I can't. They at least they did. All I'm saying is, like, I can't think of a worse way to prop up Diesel in his first championship. I mean, you know. And I don't know if the reign is as bad as people tell, because it's just the talent is very stricken in WWF at this time. So,
it's certainly just, it didn't stop their decline. So that's why they consider it a huge failure.
Yeah,
live attendance and their ratings.
They put it on a guy that was 7 feet tall, 300 pounds, which was Vince's delight in the 80s, and it didn't work. And I think that like Nash always says this, and I do agree with him on this. He was like, they watered me down, dude. Like, I couldn't be edgy. I had to cut promos like a white meat baby face all the time. I'm 300 fucking pounds, like plus, and I'm 7 feet tall, and I'm just going like, I'm gonna get you tonight.
Even Hogan wasn't white meat, really. When you think about it, Hogan did heel stuff all the time. You know,
and it was also the 80s. Like, it was also the 80s. Hogan could be, but Diesel had his own charisma. Diesel's charisma is right here. This is Diesel's charisma. All of Diesel's promo is like this. That's Diesel's swag or whatever. Hogan is like, oh, like, and just like Hogan is just engulfs you. And they wanted Diesel to be that guy, like, you know, talk loud and all that stuff. But Diesel, we found out with Kevin Nash and WCW's NWO, this is right here, this range. That's what I'm saying. Like, best. Of all the things that Nash embellishes or whatever, him and Hall were the biggest guys to Vince in 95 going, dude, you gotta fucking be edgy, before the NWO even debuted. And then after the NWO debuted, they were like, we fucking told you. Like, you know, like they were telling them that from the other promotion. We fucking tried to tell you in 95 that you got to get a little bit more edgy. You can't be.
You got to have attitude.
Yeah.
You got to have attitude.
You got to make it look real. Like Sean just happened to help out a lot because he was really a dickhole in the ring and would really be like, if a fireworks didn't go off, he'd be like, you're fucking an idiot. Like, he'd push refs all the time. Like, get out of the way. Or like he'd almost trip over camera guys and fucking kick the camera. Like, you know, like Michaels was a dick. Like, but like that's what fans wanted to see. They liked that stuff. Like, they were just like, oh yeah, like that felt real to me. So I don't know. Maybe it is that bad. I'll say it is. Diesel, is it really still that bad? It is. Diesel's.
I disagree slightly.
And just to put a button on it, Diesel was never a great worker.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't.
This next one will blow you away. The Lex Express in 1993. After leaving WCW in 92, Luger joined the WWF as a bodybuilder in the WBF. There's a reason for that. In 1993, he would debut in the WWF as the narcissist Lex Luger, What a flop that was. 93 marked an unusual time in WWE history. Hulk Hogan had seemingly left the company, only to come back and not quite connect with fans the way he once had. Bret Hart, despite the obvious talent, hadn't exactly thrived as a box office draw in his first world title reign there. However, WWE took a sharp turn with his booking over Independence Day. Luger would be a part of what we called a staged body slam challenge with Yokozuna on the deck of the USS Intrepid, and after a cavalcade of babyfaces came up short and slamming the behemoth, Luger arrived via helicopter and got the job done. Overnight, he transformed into a new version of himself, a patriotic babyface and the number one contender, challenging for Yokozuna's WWF Championship. The company turned to Lex, situated in America Hero-style gimmick opposite Yokozuna. The results just weren't exactly stellar. The company also didn't book him strong enough against the 500-pound WWF champion. After a 2-month build, Lex only defeated Yokozuna by countout. Between Luger's performance and the fans' reaction, it all turned out to be a big flop. Okay, I'm going to say this isn't as bad as it was. It's worse. It's worse than we thought.
See, I'm the other way. I agree with you. It isn't as bad because I don't know that Vince ever planned on taking it off Yoko anyway. A lot of people want to make the controversy up where they're like, oh, Luger wasn't getting the response on the house shows up. Vince doesn't work like that. Like Vince back then, in the 2000s, yes, Vince would rewrite Raws, we hear the day of and all that stuff. Back here, Vince let things breathe out, right? Vince purposely, there's no way, Vince would have just pulled the trigger if he wanted Lex to win. Vince would not have done the Lex Express thing. Vince would not have done the whole campaign and then told everybody, we'll wait and see. Vince always was a big build guy, and then I have this pay-per-view where they're going to pay off. Like, I think all Vince wanted to do was build another top star. He knew, like, the classic wrestling fans liked Bret. The Undertaker was their comic book character guy at the time. And so I think that Vince was just like, I need to make another guy that people like, this American guy. Like poor Hacksaw's like, I'm fucking sitting right here and you guys don't fucking care. Like, but I think Vince, and I think the American gimmick might have been the wrong gimmick to give to Lex. Like, but at the same time, like, I think that all Vince wanted out of this was another top guy he's the upper mid-carder that I could also slide into the main event if I want to. And if he caught fire, do I think that Luger would have won the title? Absolutely. But I don't think for a second that Vince wanted the title to change. And the reason why I say this is because when he took the title off Bret and that they did the whole Hogan thing, if taking the title off Bret was because Hogan politicked, which he did politic, I'm not saying he didn't, but Vince wanted the title off Bret anyway. So Vince would have just left. Yokozuna beat Bret anyway in that match. Like,
right,
everybody forgets that. Everybody forgets that. Vince just would have kept the title on Yoko all the way from WrestleMania through. Like, that's what he wanted to do.
Which kind of did because Hogan lost it just a few months later.
Yes, yeah. Hulk politicked, and Vince is like, well, let's try to get lightning in a bottle twice, and it didn't. And then he's like, you're going to lose at King of the Ring. So, like, the Hogan thing was just a blip in the radar. It was never... Vince's goal was to get it off Bret. He wanted the belt off Bret, and people just didn't understand that. Now, later in the year, did Bret start getting more cheers than Luger? Yes. And I think people were like, just give it to Bret because now we believe in him. And then they did the proper build-up, and Bret beat Yoko at WrestleMania 10, which was a much better build-up and everything. But I don't believe that Bret or Lex was ever designed to get the belt. Now, if Lex was selling out arenas and he became the next Hulk Hogan, fuck yeah, Vince would have pulled the trigger. But I don't think Vince ever thought that. I think Vince is just like, I need another babyface that's not Bret and not Hulk, to get over. I need to get him over. Lex is big. He looks awesome. His body's amazing. He checked all the boxes for Vince. I don't think it's as bad when you look at it because people view SummerSlam as that was the flop. I'm like, no, it wasn't anything Luger said before. Luger was also never going to win the title at WrestleMania 10, where the rumor was that Luger was at a bar the night before and he told some reporter, I'm gonna beat Yoko and then face Bret in the main event. And then Vince caught wind of that, and the next day he's like, well, now you're not going to beat Yokozuna. And it was always going to be Yoko and Bret at the main WrestleMania 10. It was always going to be. Vince was just trying to make another top mid-carder. That's all he was trying to do.
I will say, though, Sorry, I will say, like, I think was it a Bruce Pritchard episode on Luger with Something to Wrestle where they were going over Lex had a really bad attitude.
He did, yes. I'm not. Yeah.
So like, I don't think it. I agree with you, but I also don't think it helped that.
But nobody saw the bad
very
attitude though. I totally believe that Luger was a dick. I'm not disputing that at all. I'm just saying like we only see the finished product on television, and Luger was a smiling, high fiving babyface. Like
No, I'm saying backstage, like Vince
Yeah.
wouldn't if he had a better attitude or more workable. And Bruce was probably reporting back to the office how like this guy doesn't want to do anything. He's not good with the fans. He doesn't. He gets pissed. And whatever. He didn't have time to shower, like whatever the stuff. And even though he was on a bus and taken care of, like I think he probably just rubbed everyone the wrong way. So even if there was a chance where Vince was going to do it, that probably soured. He's like, that this is not our guy. He doesn't want to do the kiss the babies thing, and he can't be that Hogan or that guy.
Do you think this Lex Express thing was an idea that was maybe ahead of its time or behind its time? I mean, in my head, Cena would have smashed this. It would have been phenomenal with him.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Cena would have smashed it. A lot of guys would have smashed it. I think a lot of guys would have taken it and run with it. In my opinion, it was simply the talent involved and lack of enthusiasm, and it was a little bit of a feeling of entitlement that, again, had he embraced it, it would have been huge. So during that time, there were little things, that came out in Lex that maybe weren't visible before.
That he's an asshole? Was an asshole?
That.
Okay.
And, his lack of willingness to do a lot of promotional things and jump into it and really immerse himself.
What did Lex do after SummerSlam?
I mean, he was
WrestleMania?
he was one of the top baby faces, and then him and Brett tied. They went over the top rope at the same time at Royal Rumble 94.
Right.
He lost to Yoko by DQ at WrestleMania, and then Yoko would go on to lose to Brett in the main event.
Two matches.
And then, mid 94, that's when Luger feuded with Tatanka. Tatanka turned heel. And then in 95, he was kind of tag teaming with the Bulldog and was floundering a little bit. And then I think they were going to put him in a main event spot. They were going to turn him heel, it seemed, and he was going to take on Diesel. But that's when he decided to go back to WCW. But I mean, in all fairness with Lex, like, he was one of the most over guys, like, in the Monday Night War eras. Like, there were times where, like, Luger would come out, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, people were just...
They blew up for him.
He would face a prelim on Nitro and try to rack him, and the crowd would erupt. Like, and him beating Hogan, like, on that Nitro where he made Hogan, like, submit, the place went crazy when he won the world title. So, like, Luger...
There's bright spots there.
To your point, like WCW somehow knew how to use him better. I don't know how that worked, but it just did. Like people were fucking into Luger, and he was awful. Like his wrestling skills had declined so bad. Like after he went back to WCW in 95, 96, he just didn't look. But he looked like $1 million bucks. But like I don't know what it was, man. Like when he turned face, like people were into him. Like there were so many Monday Nitros where that place was fucking rocking, and he was just fucking facing like a C- player. Like, just
and everything you're talking about, like even diminishing Yoko a little bit on the Intrepid and all that crap was all for nothing. When you see what he did in WCW after it, like I think it's not that bad. I think it's worse than what we thought when we saw it happen live. And I'm
glad we're divisive on this because that's what this episode should be about.
I think it's because for WWF it hurt them even more than they were already.
Yeah.
So sorry, Craig, I don't know if you agree or disagree.
What was our immediate reaction? Was it laughter? It probably was laughter.
It was laughter. We did feel like it was a flop, and I think the whole wrestling world felt it was a flop. Yeah, it's like how do you not book him all the hype that you did or whatever? At the very least, even if it was telegraphed, he should beat Yoko, and Yoko could beat it back like 4 months later. It's not out of the
just given to that night. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's so weird. And it didn't nothing with Luger really ever paid off in WWF. Nothing really paid off the way it should have.
Yeah, when he wasn't depended on, that's when Luger got over, and everyone's like, "Oh, I love Luger." And then like when they tried to push him, even in WCW, they're like, "We don't like Luger."
Yeah, and they're like, "We love Luger now because you don't like him."
Yeah, then when they stopped pushing him as the heavyweight title, like they're like, "We fucking love Luger. Like, why aren't you putting the belt on him?" And then they do, and they're like,
"So weird.
We don't like that."
He's such an enigma like that. It just doesn't make any sense. Like Luger's that one thing that you can't explain fully in the world of wrestling. It's just so weird. From the moments of like Brody scaring him out of the ring back in his early days to his flops in WWF and then his weird little blips, like high blips in WCW.
It's weird though. He never tried to do anything else. Like it's not like he tried to star in movies or anything like that. He didn't care for wrestling, but he goes into it and then knows that he looks good and that people will pay him a lot of money. And then he just drifted on his entire career, just making the best.
He really just cared about working out. If you're being
he cared about working out, and he was like really smart with business. I guess a lot of people would come up to him in the back.
Yeah,
how should I structure? Like Lex knew how to budget money and like save money and negotiate contracts. And like it's so funny. Like he stayed in wrestling. He never tried to leave. But like he was just like his whole thing was like, I don't care if I'm successful in the ring. I'm gonna negotiate the best deal. Like, you know, it's crazy. It's really weird.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that seemed like he never really loved it.
Yeah.
Right.
But he loved the money and he
Yeah.
negotiated,
100%. No, this was fun. There's a lot more. There's gonna be so many installments of this particular topic, so looking forward to more. Should be good. For audio fans, give us a listen to Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio. Watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel, and check out exclusive content on Daily Motion at Our Wrestling Podcast. And on social media, can you give us a follow on Instagram at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast? For Jess Craig and myself, this is the O.W.P signing off. Have a good